In an industry full of layoffs, failed projects, and all sorts of turmoil, developers and publishers need to explore the spectrum of price, but gamers and media also need to explore it by actually supporting the projects. So let's break it down. Hi, I'm Adam. I mostly cover RPGs and open world games, and I've recently been playing Echoes of the End and Mafia: The Old Country, two games that explore the quality and price spectrum. That's what spurred this video, so if this is up your alley, stick around and subscribe to show some support. I want to break this discussion into three parts. 1, exploring the price spectrum itself and what that means from a development standpoint. 2, we have to talk about consumers, media and content creators and their role in this. It takes two to tango, and I think there's some hypocrisy at play in the industry. A lot of people want a healthier, more sustainable industry, but their actions don't always reflect that. And 3, I want to highlight some great games from the past year or so that are doing just that and encourage you to go support. I mostly want to talk about AA and AAA games because indie games have been holding the lower end of the price scale for years. You can get absolute bangers for next to nothing, and they've consistently explored that scale from games as cheap as $5 all the way up to $40 or even $50. AA games though are a bit of a wishy-washy space. I know one when I see it, but defining it is tricky. Typically, they're developed by smaller teams on a lower budget, and you can usually see where the concessions were made. Expedition 33 is a perfect example. It was developed by just 30 people, it had a publisher, so it wasn't indie, and while it has amazing art direction, it doesn't have Naughty Dog level animations or bloated open worlds filled with a load of crap. Its reported budget was under $30 million, and that's a fraction of what something like Ubisoft or Naughty Dog or Rockstar or any of these publishers would spend. And that's important, because these teams don't need to sell 10 million copies to make a profit. As of the latest reports, Clair Obscur sold 3.3 million units, and if we just do the basic maths at $50 each after the rough platform cuts, that's still about $115 million. And that's off a budget of around $30 million, which is just an insane amount of profit. To put that into context, Spider-Man 2 reportedly cost around $315 million. And because of that, you can see why things are so risky for AAA developers nowadays, even with having somebody like Sony backing them. And while there's still a lot of great games in the AAA space, a lot of them do just feel quite safe, because big publishers and console manufacturers have trained audiences to expect a certain level of quality that absolutely balloons gaming budgets, and I think it's the reason why AAA games do feel very safe recently. Star Wars Outlaws just seems like a very safe game. Insomniac Games, who are one of my favourite developers of all time, are now going to become a Marvel studio, which is just an absolute travesty. And look, I understand why this is the case. Insomniac are becoming a Marvel studio because it's just a bit of a safer bet. Yes, you still have licensing costs, so you're not turning as much of a profit. But realistically, if you are a developer that can create games on the level that Insomniac can, and then you combine that with Marvel licenses, they should sell. It should be a safer bet, but it still is really disappointing. And you can see it reflected in the online discourse whenever a game that has a lesser budget comes out. Look at Mafia: The Old Country. My timeline was full of dumb animation comparisons to Red Dead Redemption or other massive budget games, and yes, I know a lot of it is rage bait, but there is enough interest in this to spread the wrong message. How many people skipped Mafia not because of thoughtful reviews, but because of a viral NPC idle animation comparison? I mean, these AAA publishers have just spent years making sure every tiny detail animates perfectly, and that's created sky-high expectations for every game. And even if you get into the studios that just bloat the games with a load of content, they have also ruined it, because a lot of these lower end AAA games or AA games end up in that space where they're constantly being compared to games that are just made on completely different timelines and budgets. And the thing is, it's almost like Frankenstein's monsters. These publishers created these expectations, but now they're trapped by them, and the budgets are just ballooning to meet the expectations. And it's kind of hard to know which came first, where the consumer's demanding this level of quality or where the publisher's setting the standard and now everyone just expects it. See, we kind of saw this exploration of the scale in a AAA sense with Spider-Man Miles Morales, but I would love to see other big name devs tackle this. Think of how cool it would be seeing a lower budget and shorter dev time, like $40 to $50 game from these studios. Like, imagine a Last of Us title that runs for, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours and it only took 3 years to make. Or a budget Venom game that takes place during the events of Spider-Man 2, which was a thing, but then it got cancelled. And now we're going through console generations without seeing a new game from some of these studios. And I feel like there is a bit of fear because of the reception to games nowadays. Like, imagine a Naughty Dog game where there's an idle NPC animation that doesn't completely accurately paint a fence, the internet would blow up. And that brings me on to the consumer and media and content creators' role in this whole conversation. Now, this won't be a popular opinion, but I have to get this out here. Gamers are extremely entitled, and I don't mean expecting a finished product for whatever you pay. You should get whatever you pay for, and I think in almost every single instance, you do. But there is a belief that things shouldn't cost money, or they shouldn't cost as much as they do. For whatever reason, there's just no value attached to the artistry of making these games. But the reality is, games are cheaper than they've ever been. The first game to raise its price to $70 was NBA 2K21, and it seemed like a bit of a jump, but even if you account for inflation now, that $70 is the equivalent of $83 in today's money. So having an $80 game now is still cheaper than what a $70 game was 4 years ago, which essentially erases the price increase. Now, I have to get this obligatory statement in that greed plays a part in all of this. But that doesn't mean that these games aren't worth their current price. Mario Kart World cost €90 here in Ireland. And while I got it as a bundle, so it worked out at something like 50, I'd say that there are loads of people who paid the €90 for it, but have already put 50 or 60 hours into the game. And that's a time to money spent ratio that almost nothing else can provide. Now, I don't think about games in those terms, but I know a lot of people do. And in general, there is a sticker shock to a lot of these games and consoles. I mean, I still look at an 80 or €90 game and I think, wow, that's a lot of money. The most ridiculous case I've seen of this entitlement is with Mike Chi, the creator of the Retro Thing. Now, this is a niche retro gaming upscaler, and it's made by a husband and wife team. And this is a high quality, small business made product filling a tiny, tiny gap in the market. And because it's manufactured overseas, the tariffs hit hard in the US. The obvious course of action would be to raise the consumer price, but they decided to foot the bill for the tariffs, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Some people just didn't understand the situation, even going as far as asking why they didn't just change their manufacturing to America. And if you even understand the most basic principles of manufacturing and economics, you know that it'd be prohibitively expensive, and odds are it would have cost way more to make it in America than it would to even import all it in, including the tariffs. And I can't help but feel that Mike Chi just absorbed the cost because he wasn't willing to deal with the backlash. I can already read the Twitter comments, I can already read the Reddit posts about passing the price on to the consumer, but for a small business, I don't understand how they can keep operating in the future. And that's an extreme case, but the general sentiment carries over. People don't want to spend money on quality products. Free-to-play games and things like Game Pass have trained players to expect cheap or essentially free games. I've seen countless people say, oh, is this free to play? And I'd respond no, and then they'd say, oh, I'm not going to play it. Or if it's not on Game Pass, I'm not buying it. And yeah, games are expensive as a hobby, but this mindset is just harming the industry that we all claim to love. And fair enough, you might have the money to drop $80 or $90 on a brand new game, and that is a big part of this video. There's loads of options like the subscription services, like waiting for sales, but if you want to be a part of the conversation and get day one games that'll give you largely the same experience, then you have to check out the AA and low end of AAA games that explore that scale. And then on the media and content creator side, there's one major problem. I don't think a lot of people get the middle space. To me, AA is where you go to find something that might be rough around the edges but has a special core that if you can get to, you will love. Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 is exactly that. Yeah, there were some weird graphical issues and the game was clunky and it didn't run great when it first came to PC, but Jesus, there is a special something to that game. And then eventually Warhorse moved on to create Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which I believe is one of, if not the best RPG ever created. And the same line of thinking goes towards games like Banisher's Ghost of New Eden or even Echoes of the End, a game that I just played this week. I feel like I watch or read people's opinions of these games and they're just missing the point. I think it's cool that they're made on smaller budgets with smaller teams and you can feel the passion. And sometimes something truly special on all fronts comes true, like Expedition 33. And you're probably asking, why does all of this matter? Why did I just ramble about AA games and how they are oftentimes lesser than a lot of AAA games, but there's still something special there? But I think many of us do care about how the sauce is made. And if you're examining an old game, let's just say Metal Gear Solid 1, you look at that from the lens of, wow, what they managed to do in 1998 with this technology, with whatever techniques they used, was really impressive. So why shouldn't we be impressed when AA teams achieve results that are on par with some AAA studios with a fraction of the resources. And I think that context matters. And that's what a lot of people miss in the media and content creation space. And I think another big part that plays in this, specifically on the media and content creator side, is that they're not covering it because they just don't generate that many views or clicks. And for as long as I keep doing this YouTube stuff, I will continue to highlight, in even my small way, these AA games, because sometimes you find something that is truly special. And I wonder if the content creation and media space could, I don't know, make a movement towards just covering more of them. So maybe does a high tide raise all boats? I don't know, but I would like to at least see if it's worth giving a shot. I'll continue covering AA games. And then from a consumer standpoint and why you should care, look, I have a degree in economics, and I know it makes sense as consumers to just aim for the best deal. I mean, I do that in essentially every single other thing I do, but I just care about the gaming industry specifically. So I can't blame people that will only play a AA game if it's on Game Pass, or, you know, do a free-to-play whatever weekend or whatever game you're playing. And I genuinely cannot blame anyone, because, like, I love golf, but do I care about the financial health of Titleist or Callaway? No, I just look for whatever way I can play golf as cheaply as I possibly can. But here's the thing. I don't go around talking about golf that way. But in gaming, the same people who tweet about layoffs and say they care about the industry are often the ones who are nitpicking animations or dismissing AA projects just because they're not 250 million blockbusters where the person's going to be chopping an onion 100% accurately, and that took somebody 6 months of work to be able to animate. And all I'll say is that if you are that person who has been apprehensive to try AA games, I implore you, just go out and support other games, because you just don't know what you're going to find. And the frustrating thing about a lot of these games is that they get so much right on their first go, but the game in general just needs more refinement. Maybe the team just needed a bit more time. And with a sequel, you could see them making something special. But a lot of the time, they don't get that chance because the games just aren't supported. So look, here's the section where I recommend a couple of AA games that I've played within the last year. Some of them are relatively new, so you mightn't get them on sale. A lot of them you will be able to get on sale. But just go play Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden. It's similar to God of War, but it's set in colonial America, where you play as a banisher who can speak to the dead and send people on to the afterlife. And it's just a fantastic game. Maybe slightly too long, but the story is brilliant. And if you want something that is probably the best example of the AA space in the past God knows how long, I mean, if you haven't already, just play Expedition 33, and that game is on Game Pass. It's a fantastic game with a genuinely innovative turn-based combat system that I think will influence a lot of games going forward. And then if you want something that is basically brand new, that is on the cheaper side, I think on Steam right now it's €35. Now apparently the PC port isn't great. PS5, it runs perfect for me. Try out Echoes of the End. This is again another God of War-like. It's a bit rough around the edges, but it is breathtakingly beautiful, and its locations are so diverse. And the best thing about it is that it's like a 10-15 hour adventure. You won't be spending too much time with the game, which is exactly what you want with that kind of a game. And then if you want something that is on the, I guess, low end of AAA, just check out Mafia: The Old Country. What a game. Just so cool. I love the Mafia series, and the Mafia series is a great example of a game being exactly what it needs to be. It's not overblowing it with a massive open world filled with side objectives. It's giving you a story, and that's all it cares about. And then if you want something that's kind of Souls-likey, obviously you can play Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, which again was on Game Pass, but I implore you to go out and buy it because that game is fantastic. Or if you want another Souls-like that is a bit different, check out Blades of Fire. It's another Souls-like with directional combat and just a brilliant weapon crafting system. Again, a lot of these games are trying something different, and yes, certain parts of them won't land the way other AAA games do, but you can just feel the passion in it. And I'm not saying just go out and buy everything, because nobody has the money for that. But broaden your horizons beyond AAA blockbusters and multiplayer live service games. There's a world of fantastically crafted experiences from passionate small teams, and they're worth your money. Because here's the truth. AAA games do need to get more expensive, because these bloated studios in high-wage areas cannot sustain themselves at today's price. But if you don't want to spend that much, that's totally fine. There's a whole world of brand new games across this price spectrum that are just waiting for you. You don't just have to stick to live service and AAA games.